right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's edition, the January 20th edition of the Cardea Work Group. As a quick reminder, we have structured our weekly schedule for today to be a little bit more focused on a marketing PR angle and making sure that we're getting the word out effectively about the technical work that we're doing in other meetings. And so with that, we had a couple of follow-ups from a meeting that we had 2 weeks ago, sort of outlining some of those communication challenges. And we have Trevor and Helen who are going to give us an update on those follow-ups. So last we spoke 2 weeks ago on this subject, there were 2 items. One item, oh, and you know what? I've jumped into things without doing, this is what I get for not checking my notes. I have to do our welcoming statements. I apologize. So this meeting is covered by the Linux Foundation Public Health Antitrust Policy. And I will put a link to our meeting notes in the chat, which also has a link to the URLs to find the antitrust policy. And the Cardea Code of Conduct is also linked in the meeting notes. Generally speaking, it's to be nice to each other, to make sure that everybody has a voice here at this meeting and encourage participation. If there are any issues, you can reach out to myself or Ken. Ken has been sick, so he's not been on the last few meetings, but he is still very much an important part of this committee and we miss him. There are also some emails that you can reach out to in the event that there are any issues with the Code of Conduct. Those are also available in those meeting notes linked in the chat. Is there anybody who would like to do an introduction today? I see lots of familiar names, but it's never a bad time to say hi again. Okay, we're going to get started. And if you do want to chime in, maybe you can do a quick introduction at that point. So as I was saying, today's focus, we're going to start with Trevor, is an update on the Cardea website and sort of redesigning and reframing how the messaging is getting communicated there. We had a lot of ideas for Trevor 2 weeks ago. I'm sure it was a lot of work we gave him, so I'm sure it's only incrementally improved. But Trevor, I will pass the ball to you for that
Thank
update.
You. Could you enable screen sharing, please?
You betcha. All right, all yours.
Okay, so unfortunately, I have other work, so only some of the things we need are done. But the goal was to make the minimally viable new website minimally viable, so that it can take over and look a bit more flashy. So up here on the, these are all links. So we have, if we click on that, we'll go straight to the user meeting notes. Similarly, the playbook will appear in the online PDF viewer. That's the most up-to-date playbook. Let's see, how do I get out of it? Okay, there's the little box. We have the GoToMeetings on YouTube, direct link to the GitHub, Linux Foundation Public Health, and then other related project-related links. What we probably need to add up there is also the Cardea Steering Committee, which will take us to a page covering governance and other such matters. But I think, so that's one thing to be added to the page to be added and a link to be added to the top menu. Unless you think that should go on the homepage, but honestly, I think it's probably the one of the things that if somebody really wants to see it, they'll look for it and it'll be up there. Again, Helen requested lots of big join buttons, so you can join the groups.io from here. We decided to be open about who the members are. Maybe at some point we will switch out these to logos, but that would require lots of permission rather than, actually, I see a missing one. We should have Shatskin Systems there. So anyway, this will give a sense that of the robustness and strength of the community. There we have the problem statement, background statement. This will also go. I'm tasked with writing the history of Cardea, so I have to interview CETA to get their story. That will be linked here and also elsewhere. Then we have the 3 ways to get started. GitHub. This is a link to Zoom, so they can connect to a meeting. And this is the more general link to sign up to the listserv. One thing that needs to go here is the Linux Foundation Code of Conduct, so that needs to be put in somewhere in this section. So that's the minimally viable website. The sort of next big sections are the use cases, which there will be more to say, I think, in a couple of weeks. And then there will be the sort of background information on decentralized identity. So we'll do a full educational kind of guide for the newcomer. So hopefully we will get those sorted out soon and have them. I think there'll be an urgent need once we disclose the next big sort of test of Cardea. We will need to have that material ready. But unfortunately, it was not doable before today. So are there any comments, suggestions, criticisms, et cetera, et cetera?
This is Christy. I think it looks great. Good job.
Thank you. And I know I know you had some excellent comments in the last meeting, and I really think, I mean, they weren't something that could be really knocked out in a quick way, because I think we really have to think about the newcomer journey and making that really comprehensible and understandable. But at the same time, there are also, for the next test, there are a lot of graphic needs, and hopefully we'll have assets from that can be used to explain how things work.
Right. Well, thank you. But when we're looking at an iterative approach to this website, this is great, really, truly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a couple of more targeted questions, comments. So you mentioned we need to link to the code of conduct. Does that go? Is that going to be its own thing on this main page, or can that go under project related links? Or under Linux, maybe it's a drop down like Linux Foundation Public Health, these tags at the top.
That's a good idea.
Could be a hover.
Yeah.
And you pick which one, like option A is go to their website and option 2 is review the code of conduct.
Yeah, I think that would be the easiest way to deal with it, rather than create a section or place more text on the homepage real estate.
Okay, I think similarly, and I'm not terribly opinionated on this one, but perhaps there's a way to consolidate the meeting notes and the playbook into a common header, like documentation or Cardea engagement materials, and have it be a drop down, like a pick from the 2.
Actually, documentation would be good, because then you can also put the governance in there too.
Yeah, so then you kind of start to have these categories with the hierarchy kind of approach.
Yep. I think that simplifies things.
Excellent. Those were my 2 comments. Anybody else have feedback? So I'm just going back to look at what we had said. Again, this was in a conversation 2 weeks ago for those of you who participated, but it feels like forever. So I'll bring back some concepts we had outlined. One was that top menu, which is excellent. So I think that's great. There were a couple of specific things there that maybe are not yet, but again, iterative, good. The other was understanding the roles and the players in the ecosystem, which is probably on the to-do list still.
Yeah.
And including use cases. We needed a mission statement.
Okay.
And I think that's something that we might be able to flesh out when we talk about the white paper a bit more. And I think that's kind of where the white paper stemmed from, was this idea of needing some solid messaging points that we can that someone can pick up in reading the white paper, but then also we can pull over to, you know, an addition that we can add to the website when these types of messaging elements are completed.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Using the white paper to drive the content that can then be pulled onto the website.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
And that actually covers a bunch of notes. So just again, for sort of jogging everybody's memory, we talked about the roles and who are the players, use cases, the mission, some concepts around security, and overarching background on decentralized identity. So we're not assuming, and then the trust triangle. So I think you're right, Helen, that a lot of that could be introduced through the white paper, which is our second agenda for today. And then Trevor would have what he needs to be able to design and integrate that into the website. Do you agree with that, Trevor?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. Otherwise, it's a little bit of duplication. It's me coming up with a mission and then the white paper coming up with a mission and then syncing. I better do it all. Better do it in one source of truth for all of this.
Okay, excellent. So then let's say another to do would be pull from future white paper. White paper for additional content. Okay, excellent. Anybody else have commentary about things Trevor should focus on, maybe prioritize around what happens next?
In the 3 boxes, would you mind scrolling down to the 3 different options to get started? I wonder if in those boxes we could also spell out the time commitment for the, or at least not time commitment, excuse me, more like the order of the Thursday, the topics, the order of the topics for the Thursday meetings. Like put those somewhere, like, oh, if you're interested in technical, if you're interested in marketing, blah, blah, whatever. Anyways, just put them right on there, so it's not so much of a surprise when they go to put those calendar invites in their calendar from Groups.io. They kind of know where they want to go and where they want to spend their time.
It's really, Trevor, under sort of like a how to participate. Maybe that's a header, which isn't necessary. This work group isn't really highlighted on any of those yet.
Well,
watch the magic happen.
I know this is you're being a cowboy.
I love startups. You just make the change.
Okay.
So there's, we have, so there's a lot of, there's a certain amount of, I'm not sure how to structure. So we have join the community, get involved in developing the code base. That's join our weekly meetings.
But I would say that's also that's not just about developing, right? It's really around the strategic conversations, the design and engagement, the future planning for where things need to be.
So should
it's like the growing.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Helen.
Oh no, you answer. Sorry, finish your thought.
So what should we say instead of join the developer community?
It's maybe just join the community.
Right.
And then it's engage and participate in.
We need an extra word to go in there in order to space things out. Join the Cardea community.
Yes,
well,
there you go.
Thinking help grow the Cardea community, because you're growing the community, you're growing the code, but it's about pitching in.
and we sort of so help grow the Cardea community, right?
And it's not
In-
really just developing the code base.
Yeah.
This is Helen's point, which is that we
Yeah.
have different agendas and we are focusing on, right? This is also an opportunity for people to learn and ask questions.
And definitely advance the community.
Advance.
Ooh, good
Yeah,
one.
that's a good, descriptor.
Well, we've only got a certain amount of space before we have to add words to
Right.
all the others. Help advance, grow or advance.
Advance.
Okay.
They don't care about growing it.
Nope.
We do, but they don't.
And okay, who wants to get is open to anyone who wants to get involved in
Learning, it's sort of learning, but also helping to direct, right?
Right.
Strategically influence.
I like that. That's not, strategically influence is kind of an interesting phrase, because if somebody wants to come in and, say, well, let's make this change, or let's explore this avenue or something, it is that strategic influence. Yeah.
And this is where you could say Thursdays.
Except this is where the designer says no, unless they're all going to be out of alignment otherwise.
Okay. Well,
so there's got to be a different way of handling the meetings, the arrangement of meetings. Or unless
Can you just say sign up
unless
here for our weekly meetings on Thursdays?
Okay.
that takes place
Yeah,
Thursdays.
that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Or if you just want a new web page, if it's not too much work, that you can just update the schedule there. But whatever's easier at this point, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. I think that it's real. Oh, what am I doing on Thursdays? Can I?
Yeah.
Is a little more tangible for somebody to say, I will click this next button.
Weekly Thursday meeting.
Yeah, and it's not like 1,000 meetings a week. You're not like signing up for. It's just, if you want to, you could just come weekly to the meetings and help be that part of that strategic planning. Yeah.
Perfect.
There we go.
And we didn't mess up your visual layout.
There was a time when we would be doing all of this in print and cutting words with scalpel and gluing them.
Yes.
In different order.
My grandfather worked in book publishing.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I have many of those old trays with the where the letters live.
Chase, yeah. Yeah, that's great.
Okay, others, anybody else? We're very much in the weeds here, so we can either stay in the weeds if there's other comments at this level, or if anybody else has general commentary for next focuses.
I think that's a great start. I'm sure people kind of, take an opportunity over the week to, mumble on it. And this is also something that if you do see something that is like, oh, if we could just add this or make this quick fix, you can also use the email list in Groups.io and put out a note, and then we could have a conversation, community conversations in between our meetings about specific topics. So all you have to do is use, email the Cardea Groups.io, I believe, email address, and then it'll be sent out to all the group members and people can chime in. And we can have this kind of dialogue in between our in-person meetings or virtual in-person meetings.
Excellent. And this now is live, Trevor, just to clarify.
Yes. Yep.
Fantastic.
Okay. Well, I'll input those other changes. that the other simple changes, and we'll keep progressing on this.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay, so Helen, we're now coming back to you to talk about the white paper and next steps and where that is now.
Perfect. So I'll drop a link in the chat here. Let me just make sure the permissions are accurate. And I'm going to put everybody as a commenter. So actually, no, I'll go ahead and make everybody editors because we're still early enough that if you have a chunk of text that you want to add in, I would add it. Just ask that you add it as a suggestion, so we can see, track those changes. I'll go back into here. So I just dropped in the chat is the link to the Google Doc you're seeing in front of you. And what I did is I just created an outline for us to start filling out a bit more with the details and contents that we wanted to see. So for instance, I under background, I just put in mission statement. There's no text there, but it's a placeholder for where we're going to put this mission statement. So I did start to fill out the abstract, but you can see here in the table of contents, it's going to go into abstract background with, we talked about adding in that where decentralized identity came from. Sort of some of the history, initial, contributions came from different, organizations. So we can do like a sort of shortened version of the history. For architecture, I wasn't quite sure how deeply we wanted to go into the actual architecture of the technology itself, but maybe an overview would be helpful of what an issuer is, what a holder is, what a verifier is, what a digital wallet is, what an agent is, like some of the vernacular, if anything, in that architecture section. And then I thought it'd be good to do use cases at the end. So is this sort of the table of contents that we thought, or should we be adding some more things? And it's easier to add things into the body and then refresh this table of contents. Okay.
I think the one thing from the commentary that I pulled from our last discussion is the security.
Okay.
So I'm going to add that as a header here, security. So that's where I would go. I'll go back to the table of contents and we can hear from others if there's, it didn't refresh yet, but that's okay.
Oh, if you click on it and then you have to click on the actual table on the paper. And then that little arrow in the upper right-hand corner.
This guy.
You click that.
Wonderful.
And then that'll refresh it. Yeah.
Okay. Do others have ideas of things that this white paper should cover?
For use cases, this again is just for travel right now. I'm wondering if we should go into what it would look like if we did, if this was used for events like Ticketmaster, with the idea of like Ticketmaster buying it, or
absolutely.
Or,
I agree. Yeah, hospitality, events and hospitality.
Events, yeah, events and hospitality, or education, or just in person. Yeah, any sort of in-person event is what we're trying to describe here.
I might also put something in, maybe between the mission statement and decentralized identity about open source.
Yeah, the importance of it, why you do it, the sort of business model behind open source. What makes open source more advantageous for this type of technology? Totally.
Okay. You guys can see the table of contents over here, so I don't have to keep going back up to the top.
Okay.
Any other comments?
I like it. I think you're spot on. You're touching on all the hot buttons that's happening globally right now.
I think the other, I guess in the use cases we can cover this, but one thing that, I just saw an article that says the UK is just going to like throw up their hands and we're done with passports and it's over, right? Is to understand that this, while the COVID pandemic has leapfrogged this forward as a concept, it's not restricted to that. And there are use cases and implementations that will be long lasting beyond COVID. I don't know whether or not any of this is angling toward COVID in its content, but we may need to address that.
Correct.
I guess that could be in the mission, you know, how the mission statement is written. Maybe that's a little bit on the background.
Keela, when we originally set this up, or when I first came and joined, you know, our whole focus was, yes, it started around COVID and getting a passport of some sort or a verifiable credential. But we as a team and everyone on the calls actually started looking at it in a much bigger context, meaning around all health records or any type of data that could be brought in and verified, that needed verified. And so I think that's keeping with that same mission. That's really where we kept the program going in, and all the open source architecture was around that. So I think leveraging that and not, as you mentioned, killing, you know, the UK killing everything around COVID passports. I don't want that to be seen as that was our only mission. I mean, we
Right.
saw that from the get-go that is not the value of what we're creating here.
So maybe what we can, and Helen, I sort of defer to you on this as the PR person, is do we put that under do we just make sure that the focus of this document just isn't around COVID, or do we need some of the COVID in here, in which case somewhere we should explicitly say life after COVID?
I'm sorry.
That's
I'm a
okay. I know you're.
frustrator.
It's okay. Should we leave COVID? Should COVID just be a component of this, or do we have to explicitly say what drove this is COVID, but there's something after?
I think that what I put in the top of the abstract is centered around COVID, but I think that it should be a greater conversation. I totally agree that we should get people past thinking just COVID, because this system, although it is part of Linux Foundation Public Health, it is the ability to hold health information, in theory, all types of health information, and verify it wherever. So I think describing it in the context of COVID as the history of where this sort of what helped propel the growth of this project. But I think in the purpose, values, and goals, like thinking of those three elements in the mission statement, I think describing it on a bigger level without the use of COVID might be helpful.
Yeah,
In the mission statement. Sorry, go ahead.
I would say that COVID was the digital enabler for the health.
Well, yes. Also, the other issue is that, you know, the CETA's involvement in this predates COVID, and it is about simplifying travel, the experience of travel. So, I mean, depending on what CETA says in its GitHub history, that may influence how we write this piece.
So yeah, I'm just thinking marketing is about storytelling, right?
Yeah.
And so you can touch on each of those steps along your path that brought you to where you are now, and then kind of point them towards the future of thinking bigger of what does this mean? Where we've been is influencing where we're going.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I mean, I think just keeping ties to LFPH and their greater mission, I think, is important, but we can loosen those because this is a sub-project of LFPH. So whereas LFPH's mission is to create these interoperable, I forget the exact wording, but create open source repositories to help the overall sort of public health effort. This project is one that, although born from and contributed during the COVID pandemic, it has its roots in overall ease of use and ease of your online digital experience, identity, whatever. So yeah, I think there's a way to tell the story that would help people see sort of, beyond the horizon a little bit.
Okay. All right, so right now I just have that in a comment, and I think at some point we can, as the mission statement gets drafted, then it can become clear whether that concept actually needs its own section or whether the background kind of answers that. Okay, any other comments on things that should be here?
Yeah, so in terms of use cases, architecture, I was hoping to have, more of the Kens and the Sams and probably
Yeah.
the Simons on the call help kind of lay that out, but we can definitely tell the story in a way that is more sort of palatable for the non-technical audience.
Yeah, so,
So-
maybe this, maybe the architecture also needs a background,
Mhm.
which is
Yeah.
the foundation slash, the base. What are we building on?
I like that a lot. Yeah. Because the idea, again, thinking of the audience for this paper, it is the sort of non-technical, maybe C-suite business, decision maker who's trying to find a solution to a problem or trying to decide, where to put headcount in projects and power behind it. So giving them enough technical information to say, this meets our needs, and then hand it off to a developer and architect on their team to go down those rabbit holes. So providing links to, if you'd like to read more about Hyperledger Indy, if you'd like to read more about, such and such, providing those GitHub links, within like pullouts or something in the call out areas in the paper when it's laid out, I think would be a good way to do it, but describing them so that you don't necessarily have to click on something to understand it. And then in terms of the background, again, just the mission statement, why open source, the sort of history of decentralized identity, and then initial contributors of the paper. Do we want to, I'm sure we'll bring more in about LFPH and where it came from, more of that history, but I imagine there'll be, again, we'll want to just pay homage to the overall umbrella of where we stand. But otherwise, I'm trying to think of other questions that if I was somebody who rolls up on this this project, what questions I might have and where I could look to. Hopefully this paper would be something where I could look to find those answers, how it works, what I can use it for, where it came from. But I'm not sure what else, if anybody else had any ideas.
Well, something I had mentioned before that was useful for me is definitions. Because I would hear
Glossary.
completely new, glossary, exactly. I would hear completely new terminology, and intuitively you can kind of guess maybe what some of that means. But since I don't have that technical piece and see what you all see, it was hard to envision. I could infer certain things. So definitely some definitions, basic, like a basic glossary would be helpful, and then a basic description. I know the slide decks I've worked on with a couple of people from NDCO, they're pretty simple. So I think a simple explanation could come from that of basically how the data is collected and verified and the parties involved, just what we've been talking about, doing it in an automated or visual way, that, we just put that into words, I guess, as simply as possible. And then others, you'll have use cases, but you don't have to spell them all out here, as long as people get the underpinnings, the basic concepts.
Mm-hmm. Do you find a glossary helpful when it's kind of pulled out at the end as an appendix, or would it be helpful to integrate those words and definitions in little boxes or in little fonts or colors or something throughout and peppered throughout the body of the document? What would be most
I think
kind
it
of
would be
efficient?
I think it would be most useful for the reader that they don't have to exit the document in order to understand what the word means.
Agreed. I like your idea of just having little pop outs to the side or however you want to do it so that it catch people's eye, so they don't have to flip to the end.
Yeah, and I've seen white papers do it really beautifully where they use just like a consistent color or, border edge or something where it's easy just to understand that what they're seeing is unique. But yeah, I pulling those elements out, calling those elements out, those individual words and phrases, and giving concrete definitions is going to be very helpful. And maybe what we could do for just the writing, or initial outline of the document is just bullet pointing some of these phrases, and then we would have and then we could start filling them out, because pulling together a lot of these new definitions for a lot of these new words and phrases can be cumbersome. But if we put it all in a glossary at the top and then put it back in, that might be helpful, just to make sure we hit on all those words. But I think whatever works, whatever's the most convenient as we go through the writing process.
Excellent. So, Helen, what happens next on this?
It would be great if we could start breaking this document up and having folks take on at least an outline or drafting out some of the sections. Again, somebody with with more kind of technical experience taking on, say, the security or the description of the issuer holder verifier. I think it sounds like Trevor's taking on the history of Cardea, so he might be able to translate some of that that into the background section. If Bill or anybody wanted to take on some of the use cases and then start just filling out, I guess basically breaking this up a little bit so that it's not just one person.
Well, also just, what's super helpful for me, I mean, people don't have to write finished sentences. If you just jot down your points you want to make, I think we should say this, I think we should say this and that and how that relates to this. That's super helpful too.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I would argue that there's actually some benefit to that, because people have different styles, and so by having that, how many people are actually writing the finished sentences and constructing that, if we reduce it, then the different voices will be minimized across the document, which will allow a more streamlined read.
That's an excellent point. It also saves the frustration of people having their stuff rewritten. I mean, what it's all, and which is a heavier lift to begin with, but it's more important, to me, it's much more easier for me to structure somebody's notes, or quicker to structure somebody's notes than maybe have them write a draft and it's in their voice, and then you have to reconcile that with somebody else's section that's in their voice. Right. So, having one designated writer, but everybody having their say as to what the content is much more efficient than everybody writing it at the same time.
So to clarify the ask, what we're asking of our wonderful community here is to help us outline what's important in sections of the document, and not actually to go through and start writing sentences, but only to bullet out key points you think are important. Yeah,
and it can be written, and you can write those out in a conversational style, and add nuance that way. But yes, you don't like just vomit on the screen. Don't vomit words on the screen. Don't worry about capitalization or anything like that.
Okay, excellent. Helen, is there anything else that you want to tackle in this review of the white paper at this point? Do we have a timeline for what you're hoping?
If we had all of our thoughts in the next two, so we're at what Thursday?
We're in the third week. So next week is technical, and then the first would be a welcome newcomers again.
So, and if there's, welcome, start from the basic, we could start picking our way through the mission statement on, and firming that up as a group on the 3rd, and maybe going through firming up some of the use cases and things like that. So yeah, if in 2 weeks we could have something filled out for all the sections, that would be a great milestone, I think. And then we could go into editing mode and potentially have this done in February, which would be great. That would be the quickest white paper I've ever seen if we could get it done in a month.
Okay. And it's an interesting point that you said. So our first meeting of each month is for newcomers. This is actually a very interesting document to be building for newcomers.
Yeah.
So it is aligned, I think, with that schedule we've put together to be going through this in more detail, not just as in this conversation, like at what do we need and the template, but actually to be walking through content wise. I think that's a really good use of our first meeting of the month.
For sure, because I think the other thing we'll do in that meeting is go through the initial deck and all that, and so that will all the work we've already going through, all the work we've already done will inform what we're doing and kind of where we're going. So yeah, I agree.
Okay, excellent. Any other comments from the community about either the website or the white paper? Okay, well, I think almost for the first time in our Cardea work group, we're going to get to end early, and we've covered today's agenda. As a reminder, next week's agenda is back to technical conversations. So there's definitely been some things that have come up, and we'll want to discuss that, as well as sort of preparedness for scheduling the interopathon, which is continuously on our mind. We're hoping that those tech things are going to get wrapped up soon, so that we can get it on the calendar again 4 to 6 weeks out, which puts us end of Feb, early March, if that timeline sticks.
Quick question.
Mhm.
Trevor, I think, had mentioned that he wanted maybe bullet points or, just the concepts that should be added to the white paper. Do I email that to Trevor?
So
Or is there
you
some
can,
other place?
I'm going to link the white paper in the meeting notes, in the Cardea meeting notes. I'll do that right now, so that you guys can go in and put comments. Helen, is that how you want them?
Yeah, I think doing it right in collaborating in using this documentation for using this document for collaboration would be helpful. If you wanted to use suggest mode, which you toggle into in your upper right hand corner of for those of you who don't use Google on a daily basis. Yes, so you just hit that, go to suggest mode, and then it'll write it in a different color. And then it's similar to tracking changes in Word, if for those of you who are used to Word. So just go in suggest mode and just type it in, and then Trevor and I will be able to go through and see what's new, see what's been added, what we need to reconcile, what we need to write more, etc.
So I will, just for everybody's reference, again, if you want to grab this before you leave today, I'm going to put in the chat the link to the meeting notes. This is where everything is, and in these meeting notes for the 120 meeting down here on the side over here, you will see the link to the white paper.
Thank you.
Thank you all in advance for spending some time in this document, in the white paper document in the next 2 weeks. I really appreciate it in advance.
Thank you.
And the plan is suggestion mode in Google.
And what I might also do is email it out using the Groups.io channels for all the folks who have signed up who aren't in this meeting today, because I think the entire community should be aware that the process of creating a white paper is going on, and then everyone will have an opportunity to share their thoughts and opinions in the document as well.
Excellent. And then just Trevor, if it's helpful, I was taking some notes on things we said, oh, we should do this, do that, and the website. So those are both in today's notes and from our original discussion on the 6th.
Thank you. I've already implemented the ones that could be implemented quickly.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, so with that, I hope you are all managing to stay healthy, and we will see you next week for a technical discussion. If anything comes up, feel free to reach out.
Perfect.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Keela.
Keela.
Thank you.